listeners, and welcome once again to another episode of 177 Nations of Tasmania. Now, if you mention the Republic of North Macedonia to many people, you're likely to get a blank look. And in Tasmania, the number of Macedonian migrants could probably be counted on the fingers of your hands. But actually, Macedonians have been a significant part of Australia's migration history, and Melbourne is in fact the largest Macedonian city outside of the country itself. And Blagoja is a Macedonian who came to Tasmania first when he was 3, but for reasons that you'll hear, returned with his parents to Macedonia and grew up there from the age of 6, but then returned to Australia as an adult and eventually settled in Tasmania with his wife. And they've lived in Hobart for 7 years now, as well as some interesting observations about some of the cultural differences between Australia and Macedonia. Blagoja also talks about his long-time passion for parkour, something that he practiced for, I think, over 15 years, and even led to a role as a stuntman in a Mad Max movie in Sydney. Now, if that doesn't make you want to hear more, then I don't know what will.
I was born in Macedonia. I was brought up in Macedonia, except for the 3 years when I was young, from 3 to 6, where my whole family moved down to Tasmania for those 3 years.
And why did they come to Tasmania?
So back in the day then, my aunt and uncle wanted to move out of Macedonia. So he was an electrical engineer and he got a job from Hydro in Queenstown. So that's how they ended up in Tasmania. And later on, when my family moved, we didn't have any intentions of staying anywhere outside of Macedonia. It was just going to be a temporary thing to move away from the Yugoslavia falling apart and all the whole messy period that was within that. So we just sort of moved away just to make sure that we're not going to run into any conflicts and stuff like that.
So was that in the period of just independence or before independence?
It was 1995, I believe.
Okay.
Exactly. That's exactly the year when we moved. So probably after the independence and all that. But it was just generally pretty messy and bad at the time. And there was a war in Belgrade, which is just north from where we lived, very, very nearby, just like a 4-hour drive. So yeah, that was mainly the reason to get as far as possible from that. So yeah, we moved to Tassie, stayed here for about 3 years as a kid, which I have no memory of really, and then moved back and pretty much grew up in Macedonia ever since.
And whereabouts in Macedonia did your family live?
Skopje, the capital.
The capital.
Yes.
Yeah, and what do you remember from sort of your childhood, going to school and so on in Skopje?
I remember everything.
Yeah, what was it like?
Just like any other country, I guess. Normal city, normal place to live in. Probably slightly poorer country than Australia in comparison, but it has its own different qualities, I guess. I'd say the one thing that I really miss that you don't really see here is the closeness that people have over there. Just generally, like family, friends, and neighbours, they're all very close to each other. They all know each other. They all wave to each other. You'll have like a random friend come by unannounced and just knock on the door, and then immediately after the knock open the door, not even wait for someone to let him in because of how close they are. Neighbours and stuff like that will just come in and sit down for a drink or for lunch. And I just sort of grew up in a neighbourhood where everyone knew everyone and everyone was close to everyone, and whenever you were bored you would just literally walk out the door and there's like a park somewhere nearby or a place, like a gathering place for the suburb, where you would always find a whole heap of people that you know and friends. So yeah, always around a lot of people that I knew. Whereas here, I found that's a lot different here. You'll maybe know your neighbour and you might wave to them once or twice, but you'll never actually be proper friends with them. Not to that stage anyway. I've got like a couple of friends that I've really grown up with ever since I can remember, and so one of them is my best man. I'm another one's best man, and yes, and so on. All three of us, they're just really, really close, and pretty much every memory from my childhood I have is with either one or the other, or all of us together. So more like brothers than friends, really. Just a different level of closeness, I think. So I've got friends here as well, of course, but nothing that can compare to that.
Yeah. And Did like your family, like or extended family, live close by? Like, were you connected with them?
Generally speaking, it's not a very big city, so it's probably maybe 15 minutes from end to end to drive. So it's not a lot similar to Hobart in size, just a lot denser. So it doesn't take very long to get anywhere anyway. So yeah, we used to have a lot of cousins come over and family come over, and grandmas always would come in and bring some food or something like that, and just more of a reason to get together than the actual food. So yeah, always heaps of people in the family, and always a lot of friends and relatives.
And was there a member of your family who was, would you say, was like a big influence on you or had a big impact on you?
I'd say my dad, definitely. Yeah. Another interesting thing about Macedonia, and I guess more for a lot of poorer countries around the world, is that people just learn to do everything themselves. So very rarely you have like a tradesman or someone to come and try and fix something if something breaks down. So a lot of just generally people just learn to fix and cope with any kind of problems that happen. So my dad was very, very good at sort of finding a solution to fix anything, really. And I was always around as a kid to help him do it. So we've done a lot of renovations and just generally problem solving sort of stuff as a kid with him, and I think that's turned me into who I am today. And I work as a technician, so I've probably 80% of everything I've learned growing up with my dad, just doing all kinds of random stuff around the house.
What kind of work did he do? So
he had a business, a photography business.
Okay.
So he was doing old-fashioned photographs, now old-fashioned, and selling cameras and everything to do with video cameras and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you say cameras, you mean the old film style cameras?
The old film styled, and then probably a few years within the digital, he retired because he thought there was no future in that business anymore, and I think he was probably right, because everyone has a smartphone nowadays and you don't need a camera anymore. And we grew up with albums and albums of old photographs of family members and stuff, and he always walked around with a camera in his hands. So it was interesting, and people found it interesting at the time because there was not many of them around. But yeah, now everyone takes a photo of everything, and photos are meaningless.
Yeah. So he was a photographer as well as a salesman.
Yes. So he had his own shop, and he also did events and stuff.
And what about your mum?
So my mum still works. She's still not retired. She's got a music school, a private music school for all kinds of instruments and singing and everything to do with music. I believe she's got around 170 students.
Right.
So it's a pretty big school now. It started off with her just running clavinets. So she's a piano teacher. She started just teaching piano lessons to kids. And then it grew to a bigger sort of 2 teachers. So she had to employ another woman to help out, and then it eventually grew into a bigger music school. Yeah, still going. I never liked school. I hated school as a kid. I think part of the reason for that was because I was 6 when we moved back from Tasmania to Macedonia. Yeah, so I sort of stopped talking on Macedonian and switched to English while we were here, because I had to go to childcare and all that. And then it was very hard for me to switch back to Macedonian when we moved back. And I immediately got thrown into school, and I just didn't know how to interact with the kids very well because of that difference that we had, I guess, in the culture as well. So I don't know how to put it, but I guess kids growing up in Australia are a bit more gentle than they are over there. Like, generally, you can do anything in Macedonia. There's no restrictions as a kid, so kids just sort of do whatever they want and what they should and what they shouldn't do growing up, and that just turns them into little bastards. But it also makes them strong as well in a way, and that also teaches them, I believe, wrong from right, like at an early age. So you sort of know when you've made a mistake earlier. Whereas I believe that here, from what I can see, I think that just kids they're not so ripe at that young age. They need to I feel like they've just seen a lot less at that young age than what we've seen in countries like Macedonia.
Yeah. So you mean they're perhaps a bit more protected?
I think so. Yeah, I think they're more protected. Exactly. That's probably where it comes from. Just the parents being overprotective of them, maybe, so they're a lot more independent. Like we used to go to school all by ourselves, whereas here everyone drops their kids off and picks their kids up from school with their car. I don't think I've ever been picked up from school with a car or dropped off. We had to walk or drive a bike later on in school, and
Yep.
we had to just do everything ourselves, and I think that's in a way a good thing, because it teaches kids, they value more everything. They just learn how the world works in reality, the toughness of life from start, not just here you go, here's some money, here's some food, here's a car, and we'll drop you off. You don't have to walk to school, you don't have to eat, here's a lunchbox. We didn't have any of that. It was just sort of a little bit of snack money, and you had to leave school and go out and try and find something to eat for the money that you've been given. So I think it's a very different way of growing up when you're young. Probably when I was in like grade 1 to 8, I used to have maybe about 20, 30 denarii, which is under $1 in value in Australian currency. So that's just called about 70, 80 cents a day or something like that, roughly. And that would probably get you just like a basic, maybe like a pie or something, not even a drink. Like you'd have to choose whether you want a drink or a pie. So we didn't starve or anything. There was also food from the school prepared and stuff like that. But I think having the money at that early age also teaches you about money and value and how you can spend it and stuff like that. Whereas I think if you don't have access to it at the early age, you don't really know what it is and how it works and its proper value. I have a twin sister, and she was very good at spending money from a young age. She would just go and spend it all right away, whereas I like to save it, and I'd probably save it for a whole week or 2 weeks and then go buy some toy or some random other thing. So everyone was different, but from a young age you had the choice what you wanted to do with your money, and I think that was quite nice, and it turned me into who I am. That's the whole point of growing up, is to learn about the real world, and the longer you hide the real world from your kids, then you delay it more and more. So if you can upfront tell them that this is how you live life, you have to earn your money and you have to earn your food and earn everything you get, then they understand the background of their parents going to work and all the rest of it at an earlier age than they would if they wouldn't. So I quite like the way I was brought up. I came from a quite wealthy family, but my parents never showed it to us. We never even knew that we were wealthy. They never gave us, I think every friend of mine in school probably had more money than I did, like lunch money, and I'm very grateful for that in a way. I hated it at the time, but now it's made me who I am, and it's made me very good at managing my money and earning it and everything. I guess it's a good life lesson for sure.
And you said that you never really liked school. What was it that you didn't like?
Well, it sort of didn't fit in the first few years.
Okay.
Just that transition, the moving from Tasmania to there was really hard for me, because kids just had a lot more rougher games, for example, hitting and stuff like that was a part of it, I guess, of growing up in Macedonia. It was fine. Not bullying as such. I'm not talking about that sort of thing. I'm just talking about the roughness of the games.
Okay.
And for me, it was just shocking moving from Tasmania, how not careful they were. And if you got hit and you went to the teacher and said, someone hit me, they'll be like, and why did you come to me? Go and, solve your problem on your own. Sort of very different way of a different approach, I guess. And it was a bit hard for the first few years for me to get used to this new method of making friends and playing games and sort of acting and reacting to all these new things. But that's why at the beginning I also mentioned that kids are tougher growing up there than they are here, because I think there's more teachers and punishments and everything to do here to prevent bullying and all that.
So did things sort of change for you as you went to high school, or did you still hate school?
I think it just stuck. I just always hated school. Hence why I'm a tradie. I wasn't very good at studying. Well, I was good at studying. I just didn't like doing it. So Every chance I'd get, I'd go out and do sports, and everything else was more interesting than going to school for me. I guess I was just one of those kids that didn't really ever enjoy studying and reading books.
So what did you like to do at that sort of in your teens rather than school?
I was rollerblading very seriously.
Okay.
With a few friends, like in skate parks and stuff. And then I broke my wrist. I think I was 14 when I did that. And my parents took my rollerblades away because I kept getting injured all the time. And then when I broke my wrist, it was pretty bad. It ended up having surgery and physiotherapy for a year and whatnot. So they took my rollerblades away in a way to prevent me from hurting myself. But what that did, it just made me worse, because then I went to stunts and parkour from that, because I couldn't do it anymore with my rollerblades on, so I had to make up something else. So I started going and doing flips with my shoes on, and they couldn't take that away from me. So I was into stunts and parkour for 15 years maybe. Pretty long time. Took it very seriously. I had a parkour school. I was teaching kids, and I was teaching kids in Sydney later on. I was 21. I figured I'd go and see this foreign country, Australia. I had the passport sitting around gathering dust for all these years, and I thought, I'm old enough now, I can go and see whether I like it or not. So ended up in Sydney, and I was teaching classes for stunts in a stunt gym in Brookvale in Sydney.
So when you were sort of getting towards the end of high school, did you have some sort of plan or ambition about what you wanted to do?
Not really. Not at that age. I didn't really know where I was headed and what direction I was headed in. I just really loved sports, and always liked being independent. So that's part of the reason why I sort of went to Sydney at that age. So the moving on my own was a brave decision to, get more independent. Only lasted about 2 years, and then I couldn't handle it anymore. I think I was too young for the sudden change and everything. So then I moved back to Macedonia, and
why did you choose Sydney to go to?
I don't know. It just looked like the prettiest city out of all. I mean, I just Googled everything and I went, yep, this looks nice, I'll go here. It didn't really matter to me. I had no friends or anything wherever I was going to go anyway, so I just chose Sydney, and I quite liked it. Yeah, it was pretty good. I think I was too young at the time. I missed my family, my friends and everything, and so at one point it was just a bit too much. So I thought, I'm not ready for this, and I moved back. And then a few years later, with my current wife, we decided to move together again. And then we went to Sydney for a start. I only spent about 3 months there. I had a completely different opinion about it this time around, because I wasn't 20 anymore. I was 26, I think I was. I was a bit older. And we're looking at the city from a different perspective now. I guess there was a lot of job opportunities, but it was also very expensive for us, and we didn't have a lot of money when we moved down, so we ran out of money very quickly, and we had two choices: move back to Macedonia, which would have been a little bit like giving up, which we didn't want to do, or move somewhere smaller and try and make a start there. And we thought we'd come here to Tasmania. I had the aunt here, and came in with her, stayed with her for a couple of weeks until we found a rental and made a fresh start here.
What were the reasons for choosing Tasmania? I mean, I guess you already had your aunt here, but...
It was mainly my auntie. That was probably it. It was just easier to have someone pick you up from the airport and give you a bed until you can figure things out. Yeah, new system, new rules, new laws, new everything. It's not easy to make that decision to move. It takes a fair bit of while until you get used to it and sort of feel like you actually fit in. Yeah. So it was just a lot easier to go to somewhere where we had a little bit of initial help.
What made you stay in the end?
Just the lifestyle. I really like. I like that it's a smaller city. It reminds me more of where I am from. I guess Skopje is a bigger city. It's got probably about 800,000, maybe 900,000 people, and a lot denser. But it's still not massive like Sydney or Melbourne. Doesn't have that many people in it, and it just felt a little bit closer to home, I guess, with all the shops being nearby and travel time to work being so close. And also one of the biggest reasons was real estate. We could have never afforded to buy anything in Sydney. Prices were too high, but we did do it here. So I think the whole startup was easier in a smaller place than it would have been in a big city. We gave up on Sydney pretty quickly, so I can't say for sure. I don't know, maybe we would have had different opportunities and a different life if we stayed, but at the time we thought that the right decision was to go somewhere smaller. And my wife was from another city that was tiny, like 60,000 people.
Okay.
So for her, Sydney was just a massive shock. And she got a job in Queen Vic building in the city of Sydney. Yeah, and it was just too much people, the subway and people pouring out of the train station just really scared her. Like it was just coming from a small town, quiet, like something like 60,000 people. I don't even know if you have a city that small here. And moving to Sydney was just a massive shock to her.
Yeah,
she didn't like it at all. It was just too hectic for her. So that was another reason why we went somewhere small.
Yeah, that would have been a big jump.
Yeah.
Because you already
absolutely.
had experience of Sydney, didn't you? So.
Yeah, that's right. So I spent the 2 years prior to that, and being from the capital was still not that big of a shock moving to Sydney. But from a smaller place like that, I believe, which is something I didn't even think of at the time when we decided to move. I was like, oh yeah, Sydney's beautiful, you'll love it, and not thinking that it might be a bit too much, which it definitely was. Like even now for me, it was when I go to Sydney to visit from here, it just feels so hectic to me.
But what kind of jobs did you do here at the beginning?
So in Sydney, my first job was working in a car wash for Hertz. Did that for, I don't know, maybe 2 months or something like that. It was, not much money at all. It was paid per car that I washed or something like that. It was, I don't know if I earned $14 an hour or something like that. So that was pretty bad. Hence why we ran out of money very quickly there with the rental being so expensive and everything. And we just had to look for other solutions. But when I moved to Tasmania, I got really lucky. I got offered a job as a alarm technician in, more of like an apprenticeship sort of position where I get trained up to be a technician. But it was still a normal job with a semi-normal wage for start, and it sounded like it had a better future, so I've just I stayed in that role for the last 5 years now.
And what was your sort of working experience in Macedonia?
I was a cigarette distributor, so I was driving a van around and selling cigarettes to shops. Not for a very long time. That was maybe about a year I did that. And then I worked as in an electronics service store where we were repairing old electronics devices, I guess. That was the last job I had before we moved, and I probably only worked there for 6 months or something like that. Not a very long time.
And after you left school, did you do any other education, or did you just jump straight into the workforce?
No, after I finished school, I had an attempt to finish a bachelor degree in sports. Did only 1 year and it wasn't what I thought it was, and I sort of gave up on that, didn't like it that much, and then went to the workforce right after that. And that was my first job was cigarette distribution.
So I guess at that sort of age, you were just taking whatever jobs come your way, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. No experience. I didn't know what I wanted. The only thing I was good at was doing flips and parkour, so I couldn't turn that into a job. Or I did try, actually. I did start running classes and teaching kids how to do that. I did that for years prior to that, and I thought maybe I should start adding a charge to that. It didn't really work out. Probably only had like 3 kids that were paying me, and then the others would just join in, and I was like, yeah, that's all right, jump in. And I did it because I loved it.
Yeah, so it was more of just a hobby that was...
More of a hobby, absolutely, more of a hobby, yeah.
And it's maybe just timing too, because kids that are really into parkour these days.
Yeah, I think they are. And there was, when I went to Sydney, as I mentioned before, when I was running the classes in the stunt gym, we had a parkour class and a stunt class, and I was learning how to be a stuntman as well at the time there. And there was quite a few kids. I probably had about 3 group of 30 kids teaching them parkour. So yeah, a fair bit of kids interested in it in Sydney, that's for sure. I think there was I probably had about 30 or 40 back in Macedonia as well. Yeah, but no, the problem I ran into with it was that parents wouldn't give their kids money to train something so dangerous. So they never approved of it. So most kids didn't even tell their parents they were training it. And that's why I couldn't really turn it into an income, I think, as much as I would love to. I kept doing it for years, and did competitions and won a competition actually.
Okay.
Yeah. I was very good at it, and I was one of the first ones to start training it, because when my parents took my rollerblades away, basically I was doing the same tricks and flips and stuff that I was doing with my rollerblades prior to that, without knowing that it had a name. So I was basically training parkour without knowing that it was parkour.
Okay.
And then maybe about 3 years later, it became a thing. And then me and my friend that were doing it were like, oh, it's got a name. It's called parkour. This is what it is. That's what we've been doing, and it was really cool to be like, we were definitely the pioneers of it in Macedonia, and I'm pretty sure in other countries too. There was very little numbers of parkour when I started doing it. There was probably less than 20 in the world that did it, and then it became a big, huge thing.
And you still keep your hand in?
Well, I try and stay fit as much as I can. There's just less time to do it now. You need to do it all the time in order to be to that level. And it's not like it's a 40-minute training session. It's more like a 3 or 4 hour training session. So there's no way you can have a full-time job, mortgage, kid, and everything else that I've got and train that.
Yeah.
It's too hard. Sometimes I'll occasionally do a little bit of flips here and there just for fun, but I wouldn't call it training. In Sydney, it was really good. I learned a lot. There was a lot of people out there that have been doing it for years. Tony was the name of the stunt coordinator. He's been in heaps of movies, and he's got a whole team of stunts. So they do a lot of bigger stuff. And he managed to put me into the Mad Max movie, 2016, as a stuntman. So that was probably the most serious role I've ever had as a stuntman, and actually made proper money off it. Yeah, but it just wasn't a constant income for me, and I couldn't really rely on it too much because it was just here and there, and had to sort of give up on that dream and just call it a hobby.
Plus what you're doing, what your job involves now.
So basically what we do is we install security systems, camera systems, electric fences, access control, smart homes, anything to do with like low voltage cool stuff, basically. That's like a interesting version of an electrician. We do all the apps and stuff to control gates and houses and stuff like that. Anything you want, really. It's an interesting trade. It's fun, definitely fun, and very problem solving, and is a big part of it. So it's good for me because I can't really sit still. So I'm always running around doing different jobs here and there. Keeps me occupied, and it's not boring. I couldn't do an office job.
And what would you say are some of the biggest maybe cultural differences between Macedonia and here?
That general closeness you see between people there, and people willing to help. Just generally, an old person walks into a bus, immediately a couple of people will stand up to make room for the older person. I don't see that happening that much here. I think people know about it but choose not to do it. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit, I think more, generally the word would be more selfish. I think people are more selfish here. Mm-hmm. As sad as that sounds. I think everyone's got their own problems to worry about, so they're a bit more switched off, and a lot of the times it's not even intentional. It's just more because they're busier, and it's just it's a busier lifestyle, I guess, from many different perspectives. Like even going to work, you get paid by the hour, so everyone's always looking at the clock and sort of overtime or not overtime or whatever it is. It's more people are occupied with the time a lot more than they are in Macedonia. And Macedonia, generally wages are monthly. There's like a set monthly wage, and it doesn't really matter whether you finish early or you have a 1 hour lunch break, or no one really looks at that and counts it and cares. So it's a little bit more relaxed in that way. And you'll find a lot of people, like, for example, someone that works in retail, if there's no people in the store, they'll just sit down and have a coffee in front of the shop and they'll just chill out. Whereas here, you don't really see that. You'll be made to do stock take or clean the windows or do something to keep you occupied to earn your hourly wage. But because it's a monthly wage over there, they're not really worried about those little percents of time where you don't do anything and you're not productive. So it's a bit slower paced. And I think that's probably why people are more aware and about their surroundings, or about more people around them and what other people are going through. Whereas here, that's where the selfish thing comes in, I think, because everyone's just rushing somewhere, or, trying to pick up their kid from school or doing something, and they're always occupied and therefore blind to all the people and struggles around them. Even, like, for example, if I want to catch up with some friends or something here, I would have to book it in like 2 weeks in advance, whereas I've never even like called anyone in Macedonia to hang out. It's just like a thing, or I'm bored, I'm just going to go out. And you either, as a kid, we used to just knock on doors. There was no phones back then. Knock on everyone. I used to know where everyone lived and just ring the doorbell, and then we're two of us. Then two of us go to the next person and ring again, and another kid comes out, and an hour later it's 50 of us all out and playing games and doing stuff. Here, I think, like, kids will just stay in the backyard and jump on their trampoline. It's not like you're going to walk around and everyone that's around your age, just pick them up from home and gather around and do a big game with 50, 60 kids. We used to do like hide and seeks and stuff. There's hundreds of kids playing on the street, hiding and in teams, and it was just different, very different. I don't see that here at all. Or we'd ride bicycles together, like big numbers of kids would do it together and go somewhere. Yeah, here it's more just you have to book it in.
So in like Macedonia, it's not like you don't need to make appointments to meet people.
No, God, no. There's every suburb has their own like sort of gathering spot, if you will. And whenever you're bored, you just walk out the door, do the 5-minute walk to get there, and there's always a heap of people that are in the same position. They were just bored at home, didn't feel like watching TV, and they just walked out. And a lot of the times, another thing I've never seen people do here is everyone will just chip in a little bit. Everyone will give out like a few dollars per person. Someone might not have so much or whatever. It doesn't matter. They'll put all the money together in a big pile, and then they'll go and buy food and drinks and stuff, and they'll just put it on the table for everyone to share. Yeah, and it's just nice to be a part of all that. It feels like one big happy family. Yeah, I've never ever seen that here. I don't think I will.
Do you sort of like sometimes miss not having that community around you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I'd probably speak to my friends, call them once a week and just have a chat. Yeah, I feel like I can say anything and be myself with them. Yeah, I mean, hopefully one day I'll find friends here that will be equally as good as those ones that I've left there, I guess. But yeah, for now, I'm still getting used to it, I think, to that more quiet lifestyle. But there's pros and cons in everything, I guess. I mean, there's a really nice thing about this as well, like about Tasmania and life here. We get to make our own decisions and make our own mistakes without any of my family members or friends telling me what's smart and what isn't smart and do this or do that. No, I don't have any of that, so I think that's a really good thing. That's definitely made us grow as people, made us more independent and a lot more smarter about how we do things. And seeing, like, growing up there and partially here as well is something you can't buy with money. It's just experience that is so valuable, because you've seen two entirely different places, and you get to form your own opinion about what, take the best out of both worlds and sort of compare ways that things are done there and ways that things are done here, and choose which method you prefer and which method you like more. And I think that's a very, very valuable thing you can never learn if you've only been in one country.
And have you got just one child, or
yes, just one
daughter?
Son.
Sorry.
Marco. Yeah.
And are you like raising him to speak Macedonian and know a bit about his
so
heritage?
we speak on Macedonian between me and my wife, and he listens, but he he got sent to childcare when he was, I don't know, 7 months old or something like that. And naturally, spending 8 hours, or more like 10 hours a day in childcare, he started speaking English first. I think he understands Macedonian, but he doesn't speak it yet. But we tried to make it a little bit easier for him. He probably didn't speak at all until about the age of 2. And the childcare we were in were telling us that normally, you know, if it's different two languages, they get confused. Kids get confused, and then they sort of have a bit of a delay in their speech. So to help him out, we switched to English just for about a month, and then he immediately started talking. So they were definitely right. We made it easier for him, but now he also knows that we understand English, so he just speaks English. I'm hoping that as he gets older, he will start understanding Macedonian more, and might even start speaking it possibly when my parents come over, or when more relatives come over that don't speak English.
When you say you're tell Australians you're from Macedonia, what are their, or North Macedonia, Republic of North Macedonia, whatever you want to say, how do they react to that?
I've been surprised by a few older people where I've been installing some alarm systems and stuff. Probably about maybe 2 or 3 in 5 years have said, Macedonia, former Republic of Yugoslavia, it's here and there, Alexander the Great, this, that. And I'm like, oh, interesting that there's not a lot of people that know anything about the country. So when someone does, it's a pleasant surprise for me. But generally the reaction is, interesting, and that's it. So I don't think that a lot of them know where it is. And I've asked some of them, do you know where that is? And they just go, somewhere in Europe, and I've even had a few people say Africa. No, it's not in Africa.
Interesting.
But it's
but I guess that can be a good conversation starter in a way, if it gives you something to talk about.
I mean, we generally, all people that have come from somewhere don't really like those reactions to those sort of things, because of it sort of reminds you that you don't fit in a way. But also we're bored of the same thing over and over again, because every single person you stop to, there's like, I hear an accent, where are you from? And you just sort of feel like, again, same conversation again. Yeah, I'm from Macedonia.
Yep.
My wife gets that more than I do. I don't really have much of an accent due to the fact that I was 3 years old when I learned English. So,
yeah.
But I think, you just get bored of repetitive. It's very repetitive, the same conversation over and over again with people, I guess. So it gets a bit boring to us, because it's just almost every time you open your mouth, you get the same sort of reaction. Not that I mind. I'm not saying I mind it. It's just something we've already said a billion times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of migrants have had that experience and could relate to that.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, oh no, this story again. I moved here when I was 3, and then I moved back to Macedonia.
Now I'm getting you to talk about it again.
Yeah, and here we are again. Oh my goodness.
Now you need to say.
Now I'll just say there's a podcast. Listen to this.
So you get my life story.
Yeah.